Good morning. I'm Neil Binney, and I've been part of this church family for a wee while now. This morning I'd like to chat to you about matters of faith. I want to talk about something that's puzzled me. Why thousands of people follow Jesus and listen to his stories. After all, he didn't have an army. He didn't look as though he was going to overthrow the Romans. He never even talked about overthrowing the Romans. He wasn't exactly what they thought a Messiah should be like. To explore this a little, let's look at the religious background of the people at the time. I've got a little help here from a book called Meeting Jesus Again for the First Time by Marcus Borg. We all know the law that God gave through Moses to the children of Israel. The most famous part of the Torah is the 10 Commandments, but these are actually just 10 of a total of 613 commands given to the ancient Israelites. The commandments can be summed up by the verse, "Be holy as God is holy." The holiness code, which defines holiness as purity, is found in Leviticus. This book lists these regulations, and many of them are not onerous, but just being good neighbours. Don't cut the corn at the edges of your fields. Leave them for the poor and foreigners. Use honest scales, honest weights, and honest measures. Do not cut the hair on the sides of your head or trim your beard. That's a bit weird. Other regulations in Leviticus 21 define who is pure among the priests. They can't have physical defects, be blind, lame, disfigured or deformed. No one with a crippled hand or foot, no one who is a hunchback or dwarf, no one with any eye disease, and no eunuchs. No one with a skin disease or discharge, anyone who touches anything that is unclean, a corpse, an unclean animal or person. Such things mean those persons are also unclean. This one's a challenge. Don't eat pork. Don't even touch their dead bodies. They are unclean. It was especially hard for women to be ritually clean. 8 days after her period, 41 days after giving birth to a son, and 80 days after giving birth to a daughter, a woman has to present herself for purification with a lamb or 2 doves for a burnt offering and a sin offering. That was especially difficult if you were poor. Not only were all Gentiles unclean, many of the general populace were unclean because they were disabled, blind, lame, lepers, etc. In Jesus' time, others were outcasts, like tax collectors, publicans, and perhaps shepherds. The poor were often regarded as unclean, perhaps because they could not afford to make the sacrifices necessary for purification. They were collectively called sinners, meaning ritually unclean. Into this culture comes Jesus with radical alternative wisdom and alternative social vision. He said, "Blessed are the poor in heart." This is in direct opposition to the purity rules. The conventional wisdom of the time said that purity was a matter of obeying all the laws. Jesus said it was a matter of the heart. He said, "But woe to you, Pharisees, for you tithe mint and rue and every herb and neglect justice and the love of God." Can you imagine him in a village marketplace surrounded by a crowd, turning to face a group of Pharisees observing from the back and saying that? How would the Pharisees feel in having their tithing behavior ridiculed? What would the crowd think when Jesus says that the priorities are justice and the love of God? The Pharisees taught that if people did not tithe their crops, then the rest of the harvest was unclean, and their eating unclean food made them unclean. He said, there is nothing outside a person that going in can defile, but the things that come out are what defile. The Pharisees taught that what you eat can defile you. Jesus said that what comes out, that is what you say and do, is most important. He said, the food that you put in your mouth doesn't make you unclean and unfit to worship God. The bad words that come out of your mouth are what make you unclean. I'm beginning to answer my question. Why did the crowds follow him? Because his words gave them hope. The Pharisees' rules were too difficult and excluded them. Jesus said that other things were more important, and those things didn't exclude them just because they were poor or disabled. In Luke 6:36, he made a very interesting statement. Be compassionate as your Father is compassionate. Some translations use the word merciful. The corresponding word in Aramaic and Hebrew has its basis in the word womb. Compassion conveys a mother's love much better than the word merciful. This sentence contrasts the old statement, be holy as God is holy. That is very much about a vertical relationship. The sentence, be compassionate as your Father is compassionate, is very much about a horizontal relationship. It is about community. It is about the kingdom on earth. Did this resonate with the common people? Did they say, this gives us hope? Did they want to be part of this? Did they feel included rather than excluded? What do you think? Another great story he told, of course, is the Good Samaritan. Our home group have been watching The Chosen, and there are many scenes where Jesus is teaching in a village, and amongst the crowd, there would be one or two Pharisees. They were watching for ways they could catch him out. But in The Chosen, when Jesus talks about the Pharisees, he looks directly at them. Do you think that's what happened each time he told the story of the Good Samaritan? Perhaps there was a Levite there too. Would there have been a Samaritan lurking at the edge, wondering what this new teacher would say? Imagine his surprise when he found he was the hero of the story. The crowd recognized that this was a story about the purity laws. They knew that the Pharisee and the Levite would not touch the man who was beaten up because he might be covered in blood, or worse still, be dead. Touching him would render them unclean. Note how the story ends. Who is the neighbor? The one who showed compassion. I recently saw this quote on Equip's Facebook page. Compassion does not just happen. Pity does, but compassion is not pity. It's not a feeling. Compassion is a viewpoint, a way of life, a perspective, a habit that becomes a discipline. And more than anything else, compassion is a choice we make. Another reason the people followed Jesus is because he healed them. Let's look at a couple of examples and see what was especially remarkable about this. As Jesus was walking along, two blind men began following him and shouting, "Son of David, have pity on us." After Jesus had gone indoors, the two blind men came up to him. He asked them, "Do you believe I can make you well?" "Yes, Lord," they answered. Jesus touched their eyes and said, "Because of your faith, you will be healed." They were able to see, and Jesus strictly warned them not to tell anyone about him. But they left and talked about him to everyone in that part of the country. Two things strike me about this. First, of course, that he healed them. That is remarkable, and I don't want to downplay this. The second thing is that he touched them. According to the law, they were unclean, and in touching them, he became unclean. By touching them, he accepted them rather than excluding them. No wonder they talked about him to everyone. Here's another story. As Jesus came down the mountain, he was followed by large crowds. Suddenly a man with leprosy came and knelt in front of Jesus. He said, "Lord, you have the power to make me well, if only you wanted to." Jesus put his hand on the man and said, "I want to. Now you are well." At once the man's leprosy disappeared. Jesus told him, "Don't tell anyone about this, but go and show the priest that you are well. Then take a gift to the temple, just as Moses commanded, and everyone will know that you have been healed." I guess you know what I'm going to say. Not only did he heal him, but he put his hand on him, a leper of all people. Wasn't anyone excluded from his compassion? What does this action say to us? So, in the context of the conventional wisdom of be holy as God is holy, Jesus comes with an alternative wisdom. Be compassionate as God is compassionate. He lives this out by his words and by his actions. James gave me a verse to speak about today. It is part of the One Another series we are enjoying. It's this: "Bear ye one another's burdens, and so fulfill the law of Christ." Does anything strike you about the phrase, "bear ye one another's burdens"? Is there a single word that expresses this? Isn't that what compassion means? Isn't that bearing one another's burdens? And what does it mean to fulfill the law of Christ? Well, naturally, I asked Mrs. Google, and she said, it has been suggested that the law of Christ could be an allusion to the second greatest commandment, love thy neighbour, or the new commandment, love one another as I have loved you. Both of those commandments are not dissimilar to be compassionate as your Father is compassionate. Now, I would like to translate this into Torbay 2024. After all, we do not live under a Jewish purity system, and those rules seem quite irrelevant. I imagine that 150 years ago, the first missionaries went to India and introduced European culture to India together with the gospel. These days, I'm sure that missionaries first study the culture that they are visiting and then ask how the gospel can speak into that culture. In the same way, we could ask, what is it that drives our culture? And then, what would be the way the gospel speaks to our culture? I have one suggestion about what our culture is like. Our culture is very individualistic. It's about me first. Look after number one. Get your own health insurance. Look after your nuclear family. Be successful, accumulate wealth, have a great house. Now, I'm not suggesting that these are your goals, simply that that's a generalization that describes our society. You will have lots of other interesting ideas about this. Despite the outward appearance of affluence around us, are people in our community stressed? Are people around us depressed? Are finances burdening people? Are people lonely? Is housing a cause of stress in our community? Have young people lost their way? Are people in Torbay and Long Bay carrying burdens that are causing them to despair? In this culture, then, what is the good news? Would it still be compassionate as your Father is compassionate? Would it be love your neighbour as you love yourself? Would it be love one another as I have loved you? Would it be come unto me all you who labour and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest? Would it be bear one another's burdens and so fulfill the law of Christ? Are these commands still relevant in Torbay in 2024? Because many older people are lonely and isolated, our church runs Wider Horizons, a monthly lunch for older people. This is helping to bear their burden of loneliness. Because the cost of living is biting, and many people find it difficult to make their budget cover all the essentials, our church has a food bank to help fill that gap and take some stress. About 20 years ago, there was a family in our home group that were virtual refugees to New Zealand. He had a job to come to, but after a while that fell through. They had rent to pay and didn't have enough funds to cover it. Amongst our home group, some decided to chip in to help. They put money through the church account so the recipient didn't know who contributed or how much. In this way, their act of compassion helped that family over that difficult time. The church treasurer at the time, Vivian Gilling, suggested that we call the fund the Samaritan Fund, and it remains today. Some people still regularly contribute to it, so there are funds available for people in need. No one knows who contributes, but I see from the annual accounts that funds come in each year and grants also go out. People have medical emergencies. Appliances die, people lose jobs. Cars break down, school fees and uniform and stationery orders all pile up in the beginning of the year. There are many things that put sudden stress on the household budget, and the Samaritan Fund has been able to bear that burden for many. James, the church treasurer Andy Nicol, and myself are the administrators of that fund. So if you know of someone who is in financial stress, talk to one of us to see if the Samaritan Fund is able to help. Young people in our community have all sorts of issues, some brought on by COVID-19. 24/7 is a program that has put workers into Long Bay College to walk alongside many of these people and support them. That has been able to help for the last 5 years. There are many isolated people in our community, and I know that many of you support them by the way you meet for coffee, do shopping, visit, or phone. This is the way we bear the burden of loneliness for others. Housing is a huge burden for most people, For many, there seems no solution to the problem. For nearly 20 years now, the Bays Community Housing Trust has worked very hard to make affordable housing available to those with the greatest need. Now they have about 40 houses and 80 residents for whom the housing burden has been lifted. Are there people we would regard as outcasts in our community? I wonder if in general gay people have been excluded or unloved by the church. Do you think we may need to rethink that? These things are part of the answer to why people followed Jesus, not only back then, but also today. This is why, as a church, we say we are a family with open arms. Because we take seriously the commands of Jesus to love our neighbour and to bear one another's burdens. What is the last thing Jesus said? Go then to all people everywhere and make them my disciples. Baptize them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, and teach them to obey everything I have commanded you. And I will be with you always to the end of the age. The phrase that interests me here is, teach them to obey everything I have commanded you. What are the things he has commanded? A new commandment I give unto you, that you love one another as I have loved you. Love your neighbour as yourself. Be compassionate as your Father is compassionate. And could we add Paul's command that's in harmony with all these? Bear ye one another's burdens, and so fulfill the law of Christ. Let me finish with something I wrote a few years ago. They said, be holy as God is holy. He said, be compassionate as God is compassionate. They said, actions make you pure. He said, blessed are the pure in heart. They avoided the poor. He touched the leper. They said, tithe your mint and herbs. He said, show mercy and justice. They walked by on the other side. He said, which one was a neighbour? They say, look after number one. He says, be a servant of all. They say, keep up with the Joneses. He says, take up your cross. They say, be in the in crowd. He says, choose the narrow way. They say, change your car. He says, change your heart. They say, nothing in this life is free. He says, I will set you free. A few things to ponder. Your homework, if you like. Why did crowds follow Jesus? What is it that drives the culture in East Coast Bays today? How do we speak to our culture today? Are there people we avoid as outcasts? As his disciples, what commands is he giving us? Amen. And have a great week. Oh, and bear one another's burdens, and so fulfill the law of Christ.